Small towns. Big secrets. We follow the evidence, not the rumors. Crime Key Secrets. Find the key. Unlock the truth.
Winter detail didn't fit. Seat that wouldn't let the map look away. On a winter afternoon in Plainfield, one detail didn't fit. A receipt, time-stamped, turned a routine check into a direction on a map. Small towns run on habit. Stores open when they open. People park where they always park. You notice when habit breaks not by noise, but by what quietly refuses to line up. A paper trail is not dramatic. It doesn't raise its voice. It lists things, time, name, place, and asks you to follow. Today, that trail begins at a hardware counter. It ends, if the paper is right, at the edge of town. The timestamp matters. In winter, distance stretches. Blocks feel longer. Minutes get heavy. If a person leaves here at 3:15, you count what can and cannot happen before 3:30. You count the steps to the door, the time it takes to brush snow from a windshield, the crawl past a red light that never hurries for anyone. At the crossroads, routine returns. A red light cycles. Tires shave gray slush from the curb. A deputy waits through the sequence and reads the town like a schedule. He isn't chasing a theory. He's measuring time. How long from this corner to the last storefront? How long from the last storefront to the gravel road that runs along the fields? The call is simple. Check the route. Note who saw what. And when. In bad weather. You do not sprint. You confirm. You draw the same line twice. Then a third time to see if the line will hold. On the board in the briefing room, the path looks ordinary 2 turns. A straight, a gravel road to fields. Its weight isn't in the shape. It's in how many things agree with it. The receipt, the distance, the time it takes to drive in snow without rushing. Paper steadies what conversation tilts. A clock holds still. A line on a map holds still. The story might bend, the paper won't. If the paper is right, the town's quiet breaks exactly once between a door that closes and a car that takes the right-hand turn out past the last storefront. Someone will ask later why no one heard anything. Winter is an answer. Routine is another. Neither leaves a headline. So you keep the question small. Could this time fit this drive? Could this road match this tire track? Could this route drawn by one person also be drawn by another? You don't need a dramatic clue. You need agreement. Agreement is how a case moves when everything else is still. Sequence trims rumor. Receipt. Exit window. Route confirmation. 3 points that carry more weight than a paragraph of guesses. The sequence does not say what people fear. It says what paper can carry. And today, the paper carries enough to send a car beyond Main Street to the farmhouse near the line of trees that everyone in town names the same way. Even if they would rather not, this is how a case moves here. By inches. Not leaps. By minutes that add up. By a map that refuses to bend. What changed the day wasn't a shout. It was a timestamp. A small number that put a shoulder against the story and pushed. And when the board was cleared of everything that didn't hold, the line kept ending in the same place every time. Seat is plain, thermal paper yellowing at the edges. A left-leaning hand that writes the name cleanly. A time that doesn't blink, 3. 15p. It doesn't argue, it limits the day. From the counter to the door is seconds. From the door to the corner light is a minute if the slush is thin. 2 if it isn't. You can guess about motive, you don't guess about minutes. Clerks remember what paper confirms. A small purchase. Paid in cash. No raised voice. A coat still salted white at the hem. 2 customers recall the same figure stepping into the cold, each from a different angle. Each naming the same hat. Memory wobbles, overlap matters. The ledger does more. It pins the moment to the page. Deputies redraw the afternoon with what holds still. The traffic light at Main and North cycles every 60 seconds. The county truck spread salt at noon. The plow made another pass just before 3 and won't return until 3:40. On a clear day, the drive to the edge of town is short. In winter, it stretches at a reasonable pace. The route takes less than a quarter hour. It is enough time and not much more. They note the small frictions that steal seconds. Brushing snow from a windshield. The stall when a door freezes to its frame. The crawl behind a delivery truck whose driver knows every pothole by heart. They measure the town like a schedule. 1 minute from the hardware to the light. 4 to clear downtown. 6 to the bend, where the storefronts give way to fields. 2 more along the straight where the telephone poles count distance better than a map. The board tightens. Theories fall off. The receipt fixes a point, the window after it narrows the map. A phone log from the sheriff's desk shows a call stamped 3:22 routine, not urgent. A witness statement records a car turning east at 3:26 ordinary. Except for how well it matches the clock. None of it is dramatic. All of it is weight. What the paper says is simple. Habit broke once. And quietly, between a bell over a door and a right-hand turn out past the last storefront, the town changed without raising its voice. That is why the small facts matter, the time on a tape. The angle of a hat. The distance that winter adds to every errand. They do not explain a person. They explain a path. If the paper is right, the next question isn't why someone left. It's where that timestamp sends the car and how many times the same line on the map will insist on ending in the same place. And the rules of that house was a door that stayed shut. The receipt made that door part of the sequence. It looks ordinary on paper. 2 turns. A straight, a gravel mile along fields that winter makes wider than they are. Ordinary is what you want. Extraordinary routes fail to repeat, ordinary ones hold. Deputy Frank Worden traces it with a blunt pencil. He boxes the afternoon into minutes that can be checked. 3:16 leaving the counter. 3:18 waiting at the light. 3:22 clear of downtown. 3:26 eastbound past the last storefront. 3:29 out by the trees where the road loses its curb. Each mark has an allowance for winter. 30 seconds stolen by a stiff door. 40 by a delivery truck that never rushes. A minute if the plow has left a ridge at the bend. They rebuild the drive with what does not care about rumor. The salt truck logged its pass at noon. The school bus turned west at 3:23. Its driver remembers a dark sedan headed the other way. The post carrier crossed Main at 3:18 and noticed a hat pulled low. At the gas station, a wall clock reads a minute fast consistent. According to the attendant, none of these details is dramatic. Together they behave like a ruler. Alternatives are tested and left behind. The bridge south is closed for repairs. The back lane by the mill adds 4 unnecessary minutes. Cutting through the church lot saves 30 seconds and adds a witness who remembers no such car. The board starts to look less like a puzzle and more like a timetable. They drive it themselves, once on dry pavement, once in flurries. The difference between trials is 90 seconds. Even with the longer time, the window holds. A car that leaves the hardware at 3:15 can reach the edge of town before 3:30 without hurrying or drawing a look. Maps do something conversation can't. They make different people agree on the same line. A clerk, a bus driver, a deputy with a pencil, a wall clock that runs fast. None of them speak to motive. All of them speak to distance. The line they confirm does not explain a person. It explains where the afternoon went. What waits at the end of the line is not a revelation to the town. Everyone knows the last mailbox, the low fence, the windbreak of trees that keeps snow from drifting across the road. A farmhouse sits beyond the bend, with its porch light the color of an old bulb. In summer, the place hides behind leaves. In winter, it is a shape against gray. The case is not moving because of a whisper. It is moving because ordinary things have agreed. A receipt, a cycle of lights, a schedule of plows, a handful of minutes that add up the same way no matter who counts them. The line ends where the pencil stops, and it stops there every time. The next step will not start with theory. It will start with a door and with the question that always follows a fixed route. If the map is right, what kind of house teaches itself to stay that quiet? The map ends at a farmhouse, but the afternoon doesn't start there. It starts years earlier, inside a house that learned to be quiet. The rules were simple to read and hard to live under. Work first. Speak little. Keep the world at arm's length. Doors stayed closed not because of draft, but because the order of rooms said so. A front parlor remained neat and untouched. A narrow bedroom was kept as if time were a guest that might arrive unannounced and should find everything in place. Neighbors describe a steadiness that bordered on ceremony. Scripture before chores, chores before conversation. Conversation kept to instruction. The father drifted at the edges, tired, often absent, sometimes dulled by drink. The older brother handled the heavy work, and when the weather turned, the kindling, the younger boy learned to move like a shadow. Helpful, quiet, always listening for what the rules allowed. Rules gather power when they are repeated. No dances, no company that might distract, no magazines from town. On Sundays, church. On weekdays, work. On nights, silence. Food was plain. Rooms were plain. The future was described in plain terms. Inside is safe. Outside is trouble. And anything that threatens the order must be folded back into it. To a child, that lesson isn't a sentence, it's a climate. It settles into how the day feels and how footsteps sound in a hallway. Records don't tell you how a doctrine feels, but they leave edges to hold. Attendance books note the pew that was filled and the weeks it wasn't. Store ledgers show cash for lamp oil, twine, salt. School reports mention a boy who kept to himself, skilled with his hands, slower with his voice. None of it is unusual alone. Together it sketches a shape, a family organized like a small congregation, with one person setting the liturgy, the house itself cooperated. Winters were long. Windows frosted easily and stayed that way. The path to the pump packed down into a narrow trail that discouraged visitors without ever saying no. A sign wasn't needed when the rhythm of chores took the place of invitation. The world called from the highway and the radio. The house replied with work and with rules. Control doesn't announce itself as control. It arrives as order, then as certainty, then as the habit of calling uncertainty a moral risk. Once that progression hardens, disagreement feels like disloyalty. A brother's doubt can sound inside the walls, like a threat to the roof. A son's curiosity can be treated as a door accidentally left ajar. You don't need raised voices to produce distance. The distance is a byproduct of conviction, and it grows in the spaces where stories would have formed. Investigations can't measure belief, so they measure what belief changes. Who was seen and when? Who spoke and who stopped speaking? Which rooms were used and which were kept like exhibits? Paper is not interested in motives, it is interested in patterns. The pattern in this house was isolation that could pass to a stranger as tidiness. That is why the receipt matters. It doesn't debate the doctrine or the past. It just fixes a minute on a winter day and asks a narrow question. If a life has been arranged to keep the outside out, what draws a line from a counter in town to a road that ends at a porch light the color of old glass? The answer won't come from argument. It will come from sequence. And sequence always begins the same way, by deciding which door, in which hallway, opens next. Verdict is a sentence on paper. Legacy is what a town does next. Memory is lived. Sequence is measured. One is a story that improves with retelling, the other is a path that resists it. In winter, the difference grows. People remember a hat, a coat, a car that might have been blue. The clock remembers a minute that does not move. Two customers recall the same figure leaving the hardware. One stood at the counter, the other near the door. Their descriptions don't match perfectly, angles never do. One says the coat was dark, the other says the hat sat low. What matters is the overlap, the exit, the direction, the ordinary pace. Memory wobbles, agreement steadies it. Sequence begins where memory is most fragile, around time. A receipt fixes 3:15. The traffic cycle at Main and North runs 60 seconds. The plow passed just before 3 and won't return until 3:40. The sheriff's desk logs a routine call at 3:22. A delivery truck rolls through downtown at 3:24 every weekday. These are not guesses. They are intervals you can test. Investigators rebuild the afternoon by subtraction. If the clerk's recollection drifts, the register tape does not. If a witness places the sun low, the weather record says overcast. If a clock in a gas station reads 1 minute fast, it reads 1 minute fast every day. Sequence trims rumor by asking the same small question again. Could this have happened in this window without breaking anything else? They drive the route twice, once in clear lanes, once with flurries. The difference is 90 seconds. Even with the longer time, the window holds. The car can reach the edge of town before 3:30 without hurry and without drawing notice. The board gains another pin and loses a paragraph of speculation. Contradictions are handled as weights, not verdicts. A neighbor thinks the car was dark green. That preference carries less weight than the map that 3 other people draw the same way. Someone remembers a raised voice, the clerk does not. And neither does the paper roll that shows no pause. Memory can add color. Sequence removes it until the outline is useful. Negative space matters too, the things that do not happen. No emergency call between 3, 15 and 3, 30. No report of a stalled car on the eastbound lane. No record of the salt truck doubling back. In small towns, routine leaves fingerprints. When it doesn't, that absence becomes a part of the record. The line on the wall looks simple. Counter, corner, outskirts, fields. Its strength is that different sources, weak on their own, agree when placed on it. A bus driver's habit, a desk clock's drift, a register's chime. None of them speaks to motive. Together they speak to distance and to time. What memory gives that sequence can't is feeling. The smell of wool drying, the dull light at 4 p. The sound of a bell over a door. Those details are human and true, but they do not carry a case. The case moves when minutes line up and leave no safe place for a story to hide. By late afternoon, the board is cleaner. 3. 15 anchors one end. Fewer streets remain in play. The route that survives does so not because anyone insists on it, but because nothing credible pushes it aside. The day's story learns to rearrange itself around the unblinking minute. This is the point where investigations change tone. Explanation gives way to procedure. Memory has been heard, sequence will be tested. The next step is not a theory. It is a checklist. Tag, bag, log. Procedure slows panic. It gives people jobs they can do in the order they must be done. Tag, bag, log. It sounds simple because it is. That's the point. At the edge of town, deputies start with distance. A perimeter is named, not felt. Flags mark where boots may go. The first officer on scene says the time out loud. The second writes it down. Clocks are checked against each other. A third person repeats the time so the record holds. Rumor thrives when nobody is certain of minutes. Procedure's first gift is minutes you can trust. They begin outside. Tracks are photographed before they mean anything. Wide shots, mid shots, close shots, tape measures in frame, a ruler laid flat so distances do not become opinions later. Tire impressions are sketched in pencil and copied in pen. Direction of travel is noted by what snow reveals and what it conceals. Nothing is dramatic. Everything is exact. Inside, sight comes before touch. A walkthrough sets the order. Left to right, front to back, floor to shelf. One person speaks, one person writes, one person carries the camera. The camera sees for a jury that hasn't gathered yet. Every frame is a promise to someone who was not here. The promise is that nothing important will rely on imagination. Items are not found. They are described. Location first. Conditions second. Relevance last. North room. East wall. Lower shelf. A paper ledger with curled edges. Kitchen drawer. Front right. Length of twine. Unused. Words are the first seal. The second seal is literal. A bag that closes. Tape that tears once. Initials that cross the seam so the seam can never be argued away. Numbers do not tell a story. They prevent one. Evidence 12 belongs to a place on the sketch. Evidence 12 belongs to a photograph in a strip. Evidence 12 belongs to a line on the log that includes a time, a person, and a reason. If any of that feels redundant, that feeling is the system working. Redundancy is how chaos is kept out. Chain of custody begins the instant an object stops being part of a room and starts being part of a case. A deputy signs for custody. Another reads the signature back. The bag moves from one name to another name. Each move becomes a sentence. Sentences become a paragraph. The paragraph is what a court will call a record. Errors are handled like facts. A line through a mistake. Initials. The correct entry after it. No erasing. No hiding. The notebook earns its authority by showing its flaws without fear. People trust what they're allowed to see, including corrections. Winter complicates everything and clarifies it. Breath shows up in the cold air. So you wait for the air to settle before you shoot the frame. Condensation blurs glass. So you document the blur as part of the conditions. Gloves slow fingers. So tags are prepared in batches. The pace is slow because the record must be fast later. You're not serving the present. You're serving the day in court when memory has cooled. Nothing in this chapter knows motive. A paper bag does not care why it holds a ledger. A tag does not care why it reads 12. The log does not care why a time is a time. That is not indifference. That is design. If meaning is going to arrive, it will arrive on top of a surface that doesn't shift. Deputy Frank Worden calls out numbers in the same tone, whether he is bored or alert. Tone does not belong on the record. The record belongs to the work. A table cleared of speculation. A board that collects maps and measurements. A shelf labeled property hold. The property room will receive each bag, like a post office accepts letters. Slotted, stamped, sealed, retrievable without asking anyone to remember where it went. People think procedure kills stories. It doesn't. It removes the parts that make stories lie. What remains is the outline you can carry from one room to another without it changing shape. Tag, bag, log. You do it for an hour. You do it for a day. You do it until the pile is dull and complete. When the team stops, they read the list aloud and match it to the table. Empty bags correspond to empty boxes on the board. Full bags match numbered spaces. The question is never, do we feel done? The question is, does the paper say we are done? Outside, the light goes gray early. Inside, the last photograph is taken as if it were the first. The same care, the same scale, the same sentence spoken for the microphone that will sound plain months from now. Plain is the goal. Nothing here moves a headline. Everything here moves a case. The next chapter won't sound more exciting. It will sound narrower, with the scene made legible. The weight of 3 moments can be measured against it, and only the ones that hold will survive. Cases don't move because people feel more strongly. They move because weight accumulates. Here, 3 moments carried that weight. Each one looked ordinary alone. Together, they refused to be ignored. The first was paper. A receipt fixes a minute and a place without raising its voice. It shows a purchase that matches what the counter held that day. The register roll totals match the drawer. The handwriting is the same hand that filled other slips that week. A clerk's memory can tilt, the paper does not. It says, at 3:15 p. A person was here, paid, and left. That sentence is small. Its weight is not. The second was a window of time. A window is just a span between what is seen and what is no longer seen. The phone log at the sheriff's desk marks a routine call at 3:22. The school bus cleared the intersection at 3:23. The plow finished its pass before 3 and was due back after 3:40. The signal at Main and North cycles 60 seconds by design. None of those entries knows anyone's motive. All of them place limits on what can happen without breaking the town's routine. When you add the receipt to the window, you do not get a motive. You get a schedule. The third was a line on a map that refused to bend. The route was driven twice by deputies, once by a postal carrier every weekday, and by a bus driver who could turn at the same corner with his eyes closed. Their times are not identical, they cluster. They cluster inside the window that begins at 3:15 and gives you less than a quarter hour to leave downtown and clear the last storefront. A witness who remembered a hat does not outweigh a clock. A clock does not outweigh a wheel turned at 3:26. Together they settle the question that matters most at this stage. Could the same ordinary drive, taken at ordinary speed, put an ordinary car at the edge of town before 3:30? The answer held. Even when winter stretched the road, each moment was tested against the scene that Chapter 6 made legible. Tag. Bag. Log means the board can accept or reject claims without anyone raising a voice. The receipt is matched to the inventory list. The window is checked against the dispatch sheet and the traffic cycle. The route time is measured against the weather note at the bottom of the page. This isn't drama. It's subtraction. You keep what survives the ledger. Alternatives were not ignored, they were weighed. A shortcut across the church lot saves seconds, but adds a witness who saw no such car. A southern bridge is closed. Using it creates a contradiction that has to be explained away. A claim about a raised voice in the store is tested and fails to match the clerk, the roll, and the fact that no pause appears between entries. In a good record, contradictions don't vanish. They lose their leverage. There's a fourth thing here, although it isn't a moment. It's the shadow the other three cast, what didn't happen. No emergency call between 3:15 and 3:30. No stalled car reported on the eastbound lane. No return pass by the plow that would force a detour. Absence isn't proof. But in a town built on routine, absence is a kind of fingerprint. It tells you the path stayed ordinary while it mattered most. When investigators speak of movement, they mean a threshold, not a hunch. The receipt anchors the start. The window narrows the middle. The route confirms the end. That is a sequence, not a story. A story tries to explain people. A sequence explains an afternoon in minutes anyone can check. If the case were driven by volume, this is where the room would get louder. It doesn't. The tone stays level because the board is full and the map no longer argues. The question isn't whether the town feels different. The question is whether the record supports the next step without borrowing anything from rumor. This is the moment when theory learns its place. Theories suggest where to look. Records decide where you are. The three things that moved the case did not change what people believed. They changed what could be responsibly done. What comes next is not a leap, it is a turn of a handle. Procedures open doors the same way every time. And only when the paper can carry the weight. The route ends at a porch light the color of an old bulb. The receipt says when the day bent toward it. The window says how long it had to happen. The map says the line wasn't wishful. Theories don't carry courtrooms. Records do. The next chapter leaves the field and enters a room where records are the rule. Rooms don't get louder when cases get serious, they get clearer. Volume becomes process rules that turn voices into records. The room teaches order the second you enter. The clock is set. The docket is read. People are seated where they can be heard and where they can't be confused for who is speaking. A judge sets the pace. Not fast, not slow, just enough to keep sentences from blurring. A clerk swears people in, one after another, using the same words each time, so the promise means the same thing for everyone. A court reporter takes down every syllable. Nothing here depends on memory that improves with retelling. The record is built while the words are fresh. Evidence does not arrive as a story. It arrives as foundation. What is this object? Who handled it? How do you know it is the same object we just named? A tag number connects to a photograph. The photograph connects to a log. The log connects to the person who signed for custody. Chain of custody is not romance. It is a sequence that refuses to let imagination fill blanks. Testimony learns those rules. 2, a witness can tell what they saw. They cannot tell what they believe that means unless the rules make room for that meaning. Relevance first, then reliability. Then, sometimes, weight. Cross-examination is where sentences are tested for strength. Did the clock run fast that day? Does it always run fast? Did the bus driver turn at 3, 23 or 3, 24? And how do you know? Precision doesn't humiliate witnesses, it equalizes them. Objections are not conflicts, they are breaks. Foundation. Asked and answered. Speculation. Each one narrows the lane so the record does not drift. The judge sustains or overrules. Either way, the record gains clarity. If a line is struck, the reporter marks it. If a line survives, it survives inside a rule that a jury can trust later. Juries, when they sit, are given a kind of map. It isn't a map of streets. It is a map of standards. Burden of proof lives here. Presumption lives here. Credibility isn't a popularity contest. It is a set of questions. Did the person have a chance to see? A reason to remember? A habit that makes them certain or doubtful? None of that asks how people feel. It asks what their sentences can carry. Documents behave well in rooms like this. A receipt is patient. It does not get defensive. A dispatch log does not raise its voice. A traffic cycle chart is never in a hurry. When paper meets testimony, each corrects the other's weaknesses. A clerk's recall finds shape against a register roll. A driver's estimate of time is checked against a route driven in winter. Twice. The courtroom also knows what to keep out. Rumor is efficient outside, it is useless inside. An exhibit that tells too much without a rule to admit. It is a risk to the record. The door for speculation stays closed, not because curiosity is wrong, but because the verdict must sit on a surface that won't shift under it. Procedure does something else that matters. It replaces tempo with pacing. The day stretches, not because people talk slowly, but because each answer earns its place. A deputy names a photograph. The clerk confirms a signature. The person who sealed a bag explains the tear across the tape. The detail feels small in the moment and large when someone tries to argue around it 5 months later. Public attention tends to rise when lawyers raise their voices. The room's logic runs the opposite way. The parts that actually move a case are quieter. Stipulations shorten detours. Foundation speeds what looks slow from the gallery. Jurors learn to distrust drama not because they are cynical, but because the record has trained them to expect structure. What the town said in winter now becomes what the page says in summer. The same 3 anchors return, but they return as exhibits. The receipt, the window of time. The route that refused to bend, each is questioned. Each survives. None explains a person's inside. All explain an afternoon's shape. If memory once told us how the day felt, the transcript now tells us how the day can be carried from one room to another without changing shape. That is the point. A verdict is not a feeling. It is a sentence on paper, written after other sentences have been weighed and allowed to stand. The gallery will leave with opinions. The record will stay. It will stay the same in a week, in a year. When a stranger reads it who wasn't here to see the snow or hear the radiator tick. That is why process replaces volume. You can trust a quiet thing if it refuses to move when pushed. The next part isn't about documents or clocks. It is about patterns that people bring to rooms like this. Habits. Rituals. The ways control can look like order until it doesn't. Patterns don't decide cases on their own. They matter only where they meet a fact. Relation rarely arrives as a declaration. It slips in as preference, quiet over noise. Home over town. A familiar task over a stranger's knock. Left alone long enough, preference hardens into a rule. Rules repeated become ritual. And when ritual begins to police what may be seen and what may be said, it is working as control. You can hear isolation in floorboards, footsteps that belong to one person at a time, voices that lower when someone passes the door, a radio turned low not to disturb a listener who dislikes the world outside. None of that is criminal. Most of it is human. But isolation changes the shape of days, and investigations pay attention when shapes repeat. Ritual is isolation with a schedule, lamps lit at the same hour, chores done in a fixed order, rooms kept not only clean but arranged to be read as statements. What belongs here? What never will? A table set without guests becomes a symbol. A bedroom preserved like a rule book becomes a measure of how tightly the day is held. Ritual narrows choice until choice feels like risk. Control speaks softly when it is confident. It divides the world into safe and unsafe and asks the household to agree. It sorts objects and people, not by use or kindness, but by a system that cannot be questioned without sounding disloyal. Over time, jokes disappear. Visits shorten. Silence learns to do the work of a sign on the gate. Courts are careful with words like isolation and control. Patterns can explain behavior they cannot stand in for proof. A profile is a map, not a verdict. The question is not whether rituals existed. The question is whether a ritual meets a fact, whether a claimed schedule lines up with a timestamp, whether a rule about who may enter a room survives contact with a ledger, a dispatch log, a route driven twice in winter and timed. When patterns meet paper, they gain weight. When they do not, they remain stories about the weather inside a house. Investigators test patterns by asking where they fail. If a person is said to avoid town, why does the store ledger show regular purchases? If a door is said to stay closed, who dusted the shelf last week? If a voice is said to carry authority, whose handwriting appears in the margins of a list? The aim is not to win an argument about character. It is to measure how much a pattern can legitimately carry without bending evidence to fit it. Control often looks tidy from the outside. It keeps counters clear and schedules neat. But tidy days can conceal a refusal to let other days happen. When choice is punished by chill, silence, or shame, the effect is the same as a lock. People adapt. They make smaller lives so they can keep the peace. That truth does not excuse anything. It explains why neighbors describe quiet that felt heavier than weather. There is a danger here, and courts know it. Patterns invite confirmation bias. Once isolation is named, we begin to see it everywhere. So the record acts as a brake. For every pattern introduced, the foundation must be laid. Who observed it? When? By what means? Under what conditions? And how it connects to a specific, testable moment. The standard is not whether a theory sounds persuasive. It is whether a pattern placed next to the receipt, the window, and the route still holds its shape. When patterns do hold, they help a jury make sense of ordinary acts that would otherwise float. A person who keeps rooms as exhibits is more likely to treat time and space as things to be arranged. A household trained to avoid contradiction is more likely to minimize or delay contact with people who ask hard questions. Again, these are tendencies, not conclusions. The record earns respect when it says how far such tendencies go and where they must stop. The lesson for towns is unromantic. Isolation can feel like safety until it extends past the edges of care. Ritual can feel like order until it punishes curiosity. Control can feel like leadership until it shuts the window and calls the dark outside a virtue. Communities guard against that slide not by shouting a difference, but by paying attention to seams. The neighbor whose schedule grows too strict to allow interruption. The home that never quite admits the daylight of other voices. None of this replaces the three anchors that moved the case. It sits beside them, reminding us that people build climates around themselves and then learn to breathe them. The courtroom will return to paper before it writes its last sentence. The town will return to habit and decide which habits to keep. What remains after verdict is not a theory of anyone's inside. It is a practice a community can live with locks, lights, visits, questions asked early instead of late. That practice is what the next chapter measures. Not in minutes this time, but in years. All towns learn fast. They do not change everything at once. They change the parts that touch every day. Locks get replaced. Bulbs on porches are checked before dusk. People who never called ahead start calling. It is not drama. It is maintenance of doors, of routines, of each other. The lesson arrives first as attention. A clerk who once tossed the end of a receipt now keeps it stapled to a page by date and hour. A driver who waved through a rolling stop now waits for the full cycle. The radio at the sheriff's desk that used to carry long stretches of weather talk carries brief, disciplined check-ins. Who is on the East Road? Who is clearing Main? Who is walking through after close? Nothing is urgent, everything is accountable. Rumor runs ahead. And then it runs out. For a while, people lower their voices in line. You hear it at the diner and by the mail slots. A habit of repeating the part of a story that fits a fear. The town learns to let that habit pass through without feeding it. Not by shaming anyone, but by offering an easier sentence. What we know is on the page. The weekly paper prints less color and more chronology. The editor chooses verbs that leave room for facts to arrive. The front page stops inventing shadows and starts printing times. Church basements and school gyms do what they have always done, hold meetings. A deputy lays a map on a folding table and shows how a route can be checked without accusing anyone. A teacher explains how to keep a notebook the way a case file keeps one. Dates, places, short sentences, no flourish. An editor talks about the difference between privacy and secrecy, how respecting one makes the other harder to hide. None of it feels like a rally. It feels like a town learning its tools. There is a season of overcorrecting, and the town forgives itself for it. Neighbors watch newcomers too closely, then learn the difference between watching and welcoming. The first protects doors, the second protects lives. A porch light means company is possible. Not that company is owed. People practice asking a question early instead of late. Are you okay getting home? Do you want me to call when you arrive? These are not alarms. They are bridges between houses that were used to standing alone. Shops adjust how they close. 2 people lock up instead of 1. The last customer out is walked to the car, not because the street is dangerous, but because a minute costs nothing and prevents a paragraph later. Downtown traders coordinate their hours so no one is the only light on the block. The town learns that routine can be a guardrail instead of a trap if you build the routine for safety first. Records become civic, not only legal. A library drawer that once held festival flyers keeps copies of the town bulletin in order. A ledger at the community center logs who checks on which shut-ins during storms. The county posts, plainly, what a dispatch form records and how a request for it is made. You cannot police what you cannot name. You cannot name what you will not write down. So the town writes more carefully and more often. Not all lessons are structural. Some are soft and stubborn. People practice listening without trying to finish each other's sentences. They learn to separate sympathy from spectacle. The first sits beside a person, the second points at them. The habit of asking for proof when proof is kind to ask grows. So does the habit of leaving some things alone when leaving them alone is the kindest proof of all. The story's center of gravity shifts. Instead of the worst thing that happened, conversations return to the practices that keep ordinary days intact. It does not erase anything. It sets it down where it can't run the table. Children still walk home from school. The same clerk still counts the till. The same deputy still drives by the same 3 corners at the same times. What changes is the purpose the routine serves. Not habit for habit's sake, but habit that makes the town easy to read when it matters. Years make their own edits. The porch that felt watchful becomes friendly again. The winter route to the edge of town is plowed the way it always was. But people know how long it takes now, down to the minute, and why that matters. A history room at the library adds a thin folder labeled with a year and a place. It contains less than people might expect, and exactly what they need. Times, maps, names written carefully, a receipt that once refused to bend. The folder is not there to be opened often. It is there so that when it is opened, the paper will say the same thing it said the first time. What a town learns, kept long enough, becomes the way it lives, how it closes, how it calls, how it writes, how it listens. None of that is cinematic. All of it is durable. The event is the loudest thing, but it is not the last. The last thing is practice. A quiet agreement to make routines that tell the truth when the truth is asked for. We do not keep these lessons to rehearse fear. We keep them to lower it, to let ordinary days be ordinary, because attention is already built into them. That, more than anything printed in a headline, is why the file stays on a shelf where anyone can find it, and why the next chapter asks simply why we still tell this at all. Not tell this to feel more of what hurt. We tell it to remember what worked when feeling could not. The case moved because small facts held their shape. Time, paper, and place agreed. And the town learned to listen to them first. Stories reach for size. Records reach for accuracy. Both matter, but they do different jobs. Memory tells us what it felt like to stand under a winter sky that did not explain itself. Sequence tells us how long it took to cross Maine and why that minute mattered. Memory is human. Sequence is shareable. We keep both, and we keep them in order. The lesson is not that one document solved anything. It is that ordinary things refuse to bend. A receipt pinned a minute. A window limited speculation. A route repeated until repetition became proof of nothing mysterious. That is the quiet heroism of procedure. It does not dazzle. It does not improvise. It allows facts to hold when rumor gets loud. We keep telling this because routine can drift. Habits grow soft. Doors stop getting locked. Ledgers get sloppy. When practice loosens, stories take over the parts of a day that belong to clocks and maps. Retelling the sequence is a tune-up. It reminds a town how to write clearly, how to ask early, how to keep notes and sentences that anyone can trust later. We keep telling it for people who are not here. They inherit roads, not headlines. They deserve a map of what matters when nothing looks dramatic. Check the time. Keep the paper. Walk the route at ordinary speed. If something important can happen without breaking those three, it can happen quietly. Quiet does not mean harmless. Quiet means we must notice sooner. We keep telling it to honor lives by refusing spectacle. Respect does not require silence, it requires discipline. We do not show faces that cannot consent. We do not use language that trades clarity for heat. We hold names as more than symbols. We place them in sentences that are careful enough to be read by strangers who never met them and still feel responsible for getting the facts right. We keep telling it because justice is patient. A courtroom is a slow instrument for a reason. Voices are turned into records so they can be weighed without the room changing shape. A verdict is not an emotion, it is a sentence on paper that outlives the afternoon. When the process is good, it protects the innocent from our certainty and the guilty from our impatience. When the process is kept, communities remember how to disagree without losing the standard. We keep telling it because patterns tempt us. Isolation can look like order. Ritual can look like virtue. Control can look like care. The record is a break for that slide. It asks, gently and repeatedly, where the pattern meets a fact. If it never does, we stop calling it proof. If it sometimes does, we say how far and no farther. We keep telling it because ordinary days are the test. If a town can count its minutes and still be kind, it has learned the right lesson. If it can correct itself without fear, it has learned too. The practice is small. A clerk who keeps the stub, a deputy who reads the route rather than the rumor, a neighbor who calls when the road is bad and waits for the answer. In the end, the loudest thing about this story is what it refuses to do. It refuses to celebrate pain. It refuses to make villains interesting and victims abstract. It refuses to trade discipline for drama. It chooses a receipt, a window, and a map in a room where sentences must stand. That is why we still tell this. Not to make the winter larger, but to make attention easier, so that somewhere, on another day that looks like any other day, a small fact will keep its shape long enough for someone to notice, and noticing will arrive in time to matter. Pay attention.
We've only opened the first door. Next, the receipt that doesn't lie, a route timed to the minute, and the evidence that flipped the file. Subscribe, don't miss it.